Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's recording of Top Voices. And the Top Voices is our podcast where we're very fortunate to have invited guests who are leaders in their field and leaders in this industry to come and talk about their experiences, about themselves. And today's guest is Kerstin Berns, and Kerstin is the managing partner with Berns Language Consulting for over 19 years, so she's definitely an expert in her field. And then, as usual, we're lucky to have Bruno Herrmann. So Bruno is a well-known leader in the industry, one of the best informed and best known people in this industry. And I am Paula McGrath. I am the CEO and owner of International Achievers Group. So in addition to getting to know Kerstin a little better, what we'd like to talk a little bit about today is around progression pathways, which is where we ask leaders to share their experience and knowledge as best they can to try and maybe give some guidance and help to other business owners or people working in the language industry, because sharing our knowledge and our information is one of the many things that helps us. And then in addition to that, we like to talk with individuals about career progressions. So maybe if we're going to be asking Kerstin to talk about her own career, maybe how she helps develop her own team, maybe some guidance and direction to other people who are currently working in the language industry or those that are trying to get in. So, Kerstin, maybe you'd be happy to share with us how you have, you got into this industry and maybe your own career pathway, how you've ended up in such a responsible position, even though I'm sure it's very enjoyable some of the time. There's a lot of responsibility with it as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me. Both of you, very flattered to be here today and speaking to you. I would love to be in Dublin. Sadly, I couldn't come, but I really do love the city. If I may, it may take a little bit to explain how I got where I am today. After school, I spent some time in the US where I actually found my love for the English language. And after 1.5 years in the US, I wanted to continue doing something with language. And somebody in Germany told me, why don't you try technical translation? So I studied that actually. I did, in Germany, I studied technical translation, English, French, mechanical engineering, something. Not that I know any of it anymore, by the way. It's been like 100 years ago. And while I was studying that, I found that I really liked the tech involved, although there wasn't that much at the time, and the processes and everything around it, except for the deed. I did not like to translate so much. I found it quite... not that inspiring, let's say, but repetitive, and it's a solitary work, right? I think it's made for certain types. You're kind of alone. You're fending for yourself. Maybe not today as much as it was then. So when there was the chance to write, it's called a Diplomarbeit, like a little. It's not a thesis. It's like a paper to terminate your diploma. I could. Someone told us you can do it at Daimler Chrysler. Who would like to do that, right? About something about MT, machine translation. And I just said, yeah. I didn't know anything about it. We didn't have no one covered machine translation at the uni. Not really, just a theory of it. They all despised it. But then one of the professors had Daimler Chrysler then as a customer, or he consulted for them. And he said, yeah, so go there and try. And I went there and tried, and they took me in. Although, to be frank, I read up a little bit on it, but I didn't know much. And I wrote the paper. It was about linguistic evaluation of machine translation results. Then mostly rule-based, to be fair, or direct even. And then after this, my boss asked me if I would like to do a project to introduce machine translation to the Daimler Chrysler intranet. And of course, I said yes. I mean, by then I knew everything about machine translation that was to be known, apart from, obviously programming. I never learned that, but theory and, tools and everything. And I did that. And it took me about a year, and it was up and running. And then they didn't have any more interesting jobs for me there. So after I handed that over, and it was running. I think it's still there. It's just not called DC Intrans anymore, but it still exists. It's a different system, of course, now. I found a job at BMW because they were looking for someone creating or optimizing processes for localization of display texts for HMI, for human machine interfaces in the vehicles. They didn't have a good process for testing, evaluating, and even creating them. So I did that. That was great fun. I invented the language champions for BMW that didn't exist before, inviting everyone from like all over the world, engineers, people, to come to the development center to actually evaluate directly in the cars and everything. It was great fun. So I did that a while. Then at some point I was made team lead, which was great. So I did that for a while as well. And then something unexpected happened. I got pregnant. So I expected a child, and that threw BMW completely. Interestingly, I mean, obviously, I didn't know what to expect then. I mean, first child, you don't know. So I told them I would come back after 2 years, which is, I think, in Germany, you have the very luxury to actually stay home for 2 years and then come back to your job, which is amazing. It doesn't. I think it's the only country in the world that exists.
And do you get financial support during that time?
No, of course, just for the first, like you get financial support for many weeks, I think for about weeks.
Okay.
And then no more, but you can even split up this vacation, let's say, or this time.
Maternity.
It's really, it's very well organized from my perspective.
Yeah.
People bitch about everything all the time, but it's well done. And I said I would take 2 years, and then I found that after, I don't know, 6 months at home, which a super nice, great baby, totally my firstborn, super easy, chill. I wanted to work again. So I said, can I come back? And they said, yeah, for 8 hours a week. And I was like, okay, I come, I take a piece of paper and I go back home. I did that and it didn't work. Then I said, okay, I would come back for more hours. I would like to do the team lead again. And they said, no, you can't do that. Because
why? Because you're a mom?
Because I mean, I think they didn't say that. Obviously, you can't say that.
Oh no, I know that. No,
but I think so because they said no. If you want to be a team lead, you need to spend at least 40 hours on the job. And I said,
Okay.
To be fair, I did more with less, and I see people doing more that time for less output. So I didn't get that. And then they said, yeah, you can do something else. It was a totally stupid job, and I said no. So I had to think about an alternative. That was really the start of Berns Language Consulting, because I thought, okay, they don't want me. Obviously, someone doesn't recognize that I'm able to do this as a mom. As a mother, I'm no complete working person anymore. And so I discussed with many people. And it was interesting because most pushback came from my female peers. They told me, are you crazy? You cannot quit your job. Don't go away from BMW. Don't do that. Because I was thinking about actually carving out my own career path, like, what I'm doing now, offering independent consulting for processes and tech in the language area and in the language space. It didn't exist back then. Only LSPs and tech vendors offered this. So I thought, why not do that myself? I saw BMW needed it badly. I was pretty sure other companies would need it, which later turned out to be true. And so after some back and forth and discussing this with many people, I decided to do that. And I'm really happy I decided to go on that path, but it really wasn't quite clear cut for me then. I really had to, think about it. And it was really interesting to listen to all these different opinions about that. So yeah, I kind of come from the translation side, but I actually never translated. But I'm still in the translation space, let's say.
Yeah. Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah. That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's not a typical profile of the language industry when people are saying, I was a translator and then I became a PM and then I became a business unit manager. So we need more people, actually. That's my personal opinion, of course. But the language industry needs more people with a different background. It shouldn't be always the same background. Because sometimes in the past, at least, not anymore, but in the past, I remember when I started myself in the mid of the 1990s, many people had the same background, and it was, of course, sometimes a bit difficult to have, for instance, some sort of, comparison of, opinions and ways of working, etc. So that's why your profile is very interesting, not to be a typical one, but to be something that the language industry could benefit from, I think. Yeah.
So do you want to tell us a bit about your organization now and how it has changed over the last 19 years and how it has evolved and how you've seen, what the market has needed has evolved? I know some of this is obviously obvious, but some of it is not going to be obvious, but you'll have experienced it.
Yeah, sure. Glad to. Well, when I started, as you said, 19 years ago, will be 20 next year. So quite looking forward to that anniversary. When I started alone, and I actually wrote concepts on paper. I mean, like obviously with a computer, but still, very classical. Bruno probably can relate. Very classical consultancy expert output that you did them. You wrote concepts. And you then wrote, change requests. You did everything like that. There was no agile working, obviously. And also, as I said, I worked alone. After some time, I realized that there's a lot more work to be done. So I needed more people, and it organically grew. So my story is not one of scaling. We're a small company, and we will probably remain so. That is probably because of me, because I feel we really want to remain independent consultants. Independent here meaning where we don't have financial ties to any tech vendors or LSPs or anything. Obviously, we have a large network that is needed, but we don't sell anything from people or from other companies. So if you want to scale up, you need to do that, I think. Or you need to, broaden your consultancy field, which I'm not planning to do. But we're 12 now, so from 1 to 12 in 20 years. So you can see we are small, but we are only always working in that area of process consulting, process optimization, tech evaluation, this kind of stuff. And it evolved a bit since day one, because then what we did was I actually at that time, I introduced a TMS to BMW, for example. That was what I did because they didn't have it. So then people were like, translation memories, I'm not sure, should I do that? And that then came a machine translation and maybe terminology management and maybe authoring tools. So it all evolved a bit with the tech as well, what the customer needed. And they wanted to broaden their tech stack and continue that path. And today I have to say that we find not only AI, I don't even want to say it because it's kind of, can't hear it anymore. Yes, it's the next big thing. And yes, it's tech, it's here. We all have to deal with it. Fine. But people need data. They need someone to look at their data. Data is at the core of everything. So this is, I think, where we stand today, where we not only do we consulting and co-creation, for example, in AI projects as well, yes, but also others. But we also look at the data, we groom data. So I have data experts here. That really is something that changed for my company. Then we have a broad framework, let's say, of scripts where we actually work on this data. We groom it, we clean it, we merge it, whatever you need for your process. And this really changed our business quite a bit because people do need that now. And they're quite happy if you can help them with that because it's usually huge data or very big, not huge, but big data volumes. And you need processes and scripts for this. So maybe I jumped a bit there, but
No.
I think that's how it evolved. Yeah.
Okay. Do you find that attracting relevant, business for your consultancy is more challenging now than it was 10 years ago? And obviously there's a huge advantage in, you have done it obviously successfully for many, many years, and we do all get a little better at what we're doing, if we can stay in the game, and obviously you've done it very well. But have you seen a difference in the last 5 years in attracting and retaining clients compared to what you would have felt before that, mainly because of the change in the marketplace, the change in the whole language management industry. That's where my question is around, because obviously in the business I'm in, I'm speaking to an awful lot of LSPs, and I know you're not necessarily directly competing with LSPs, but some of the LSPs, some of the departments might think that you are. So
yeah. No, we are also.
The number of times it's been said to me or my team that that their business has dropped. So attracting and retaining clients has dropped. Honestly, mainly the famous AI gets thrown into that sentence because of the supposed AI. I'm just wondering if that has if you have struggled, or if that has impacted on you.
It's a hard question to answer, because we haven't our business has grown, but
yes.
As I said, as we are not usually scaling, it also hasn't grown hugely, but it has. I do think though that the type of gigs of projects that we're getting is changing. So that would be one part, and the other part is the part of competition, let's say. But for the first part, we are getting more smaller projects, but faster. Yeah. Also from the same customers. So the long-term engagements are shrinking, which is sad for us, because it's always helping us, of course, continue our path and feeding the people and everything. But it's still coming. It's just something you can't really count on so much anymore. You have to work harder for it, to be frank. I think everyone feels that. But it's still fine for us. As you said, I mean, we are obviously, I don't think we don't play any role internationally, for sure. We are more like a German consultancy, DACH, Austria, Switzerland, yes. All German-speaking countries, not because we don't speak English, but because in other countries there's other consultants, and usually they like to work with those more. And we don't move so much on the international packet, so we don't do that much. Which is okay, because this is our strategy. We said, okay, we focus on that market. We still feel there's enough to be had in that market. But I think their long-term engagements would be nice, but they're getting less, and the small but very interesting and very high intensity projects are picking up a little bit, like in the translation business, actually, where the LSPs also, they get more little bits and pieces, but more, which is of course also difficult for the processes. Again, I'm feeling for the LSPs here. And on the other hand, the competition with the LSPs is rising, I think, because they need to go in that space in a way. They're getting more and more to be process and tech consultants, because they're already there at the customers. And I think it's fine, because I still think there's enough room for both of us, let's say, because we're just in Germany and in Austria and Switzerland, and we are small. And also, I think for strategic decisions, for evaluations where you really don't know what tech to choose or which direction to go, I think it would make more sense to work with us, because we really are independent and have an objective view on that. But there's certain projects, when you have a good LSP, why not use this LSP also for some consulting? I mean, they know their stuff, right? They are very good at it, and I do think it's fine. And I don't think we're really competing for the same projects here. I think it's a different play. But it is.
It's interesting.
Air is getting thinner.
I know. It's like we're the same. I mean, obviously, I own a staffing agency, recruiting agency that works solely in the language management space. So it's on either side, buyer side, seller side, tech side, and we're fine with any of it. But ironically, my turnover is growing, and I'm very, very grateful for it, because I'm the same. I need to be able to pay people, pay my staff, pay my suppliers, and all that stuff. But if I'm to address why my business is growing, it's not one thing, but one thing that I do know for definite is, number one, I've had to change my offering, and that's in the space of the last 3 years. Pricing is not really the number one discussion, funnily enough, in my company and where we're getting business. But what we're offering, how we're engaging, has changed in the last 2.5 years. Now we're lucky we have Bruno on board, obviously, and Bruno's our strategic advisor and works closely with me, thankfully, and keeps me straight. So, we have a very good understanding of the changes in the market, but you really do have to have an eye on changes that are happening weekly and monthly.
Yeah.
So there seems to be, I'm guessing, I'm interpreting what you said as a sort of a parallel to what your answer to what I've said. Yes, we're doing fine. Thank you very much. My revenue is increasing, but my God, do I have to be on it? I have to.
Yeah, but what you said is very true. It goes to the strategy and the work. I mean, I do the strategy work for my company with my team. And we find that, in the past we were able to say, okay, what are we going to do for the next 2 years? Those days that have passed a long time. You have to look at it like at least quarterly, maybe, or more often. And sometimes you just have to change route very quickly in between, because you might be missing out, and you might miss your customers' requirements. You might not hear them, and they are changing very much. It is harder to remain focused on one path, and you do have to take some shortcuts or change direction sometimes. More often than you before. Have to.
Yeah, I'm definitely the same.
Yeah, and many things that you mentioned, Kerstin, resonate with me, because first of all, I agree with you. Engagements are more and more fragmented. That's something I mention on a daily basis to everybody, Paula, and just because people are asking, okay, how is your setup? And I say, well, it's still too fragmented from my perspective, but that's the way it is. So, you adapt or you don't do. That's my sort of guiding line. And also you mentioned data, and I have a few questions for you about that, because that's my daily bread. Data, language data, digital assets, it's really where I'm focusing on. But I have a question, because I know that you work a lot with big organizations, Porsche and Roche. I'm not an expert in automotive, but I'm an expert in life science. So I know that those organizations, those multinational companies, they are great to work with, but there is a level of complexity which is coming from their own organization, which is that it's a complex organization. You have a number of stakeholders. Yeah. You have very different types of content, sometimes very technical, sometimes very creative. So how do you manage to deal with that, knowing that, of course, probably I can speak more now for the life science industry, that you have so many changes. There is a big transformation also in the life science industry, considering that people are indeed looking for more automation. But there are, of course, other dependencies like compliance in the life science industry. So how do you manage to keep the balance right between all these various pieces, moving parts, I call them? Because, for me, it's a daily challenge. I'm just curious to know if it's a daily challenge for you as well.
Luckily, it isn't. And why is it not? Because luckily we are helping our clients in life sciences, as you mentioned, but we are helping them very specifically for certain things. For example, we're helping them with their machine translation data. So when do we need to optimize? How do we optimize the machines? What about the glossaries? We build up the glossaries. I did also do some strategic work with them, but then again, that was meta level. And then we had many stakeholders at the table. But also, I think what you could say is you should think big, but start small. I do say that a lot of times, because otherwise you just go crazy in this kind of environment. And I'm not responsible for all their content. Then I would probably not sleep anymore, for sure. But we take it bit by bit, really. We talk to, for example, my customer that was also at the language innovation intelligence. Thank you. I always mix that up. Language intelligence conference. We do a lot for her, and she is like a spider in the translation data net. So we can gather it all up there and work at it from there. And then it's already fine. It's already secure. We already know the data is okay. So we are looking at it very much from a resource for translation perspective. And that helps us a lot because, it's in the TM already. It already has a certain security where it is, and we can work with that. Also with the machine translation solution, which we help them also with. It is all pretty much set up and secure. And from there you can continue. And I would always advise my customers to do it like that, to not do everything at once, because sometimes you have to, right? Sometimes you pick it up and you have the whole tablecloth in your hands, so you have to really then deal with all of it, but hopefully not, and then take it bit by bit and think about the rest, but don't do it all at the same time. It's a bit theoretical, but it does help to cut this elephant in pieces. Otherwise you just won't get to the result, and you also need a good result to present to management. You need the numbers to tell them, look, it works, let's continue. And if you think it too big, or if you do it too big in the beginning, you won't have the numbers quick enough. And then they might cut you off. And that's why we try to do little things, show the success, and continue. And that way, and it doesn't matter what industry, that way it works quite well, I have to say.
The path to success for me is also made of quick wins. I call that quick wins because, as you said, you need to demonstrate what you can do, and you need to prove that you are the right person with the right people at the right time, which is sometimes difficult as a puzzle to bring together. But circling back on the data topic, because I have to actually dive on that.
You go.
Thank you. From my perspective, and it's not just my perspective, when I'm working with other business partners, they face the same challenge, is that when you talk about data, of course, you mentioned the volume of data, which is one challenge in itself. So I agree with that. But in many organizations, and not just in multinationals, but also sometimes in scale-ups, you have a situation where you or myself or other consultants, we might be called and say, help us, because we need the relevant, the trustworthy language data to train our model. But we don't have that data yet. We need to actually create that data by converting digital assets, which are PDF files or Word files. You need to convert all these assets into data, training data that you will use afterwards to train your model properly or effectively. Or you have to acquire it by data from another providers. So what is your experience, or what sort of advice would you give to a customer telling you this? Kerstin, please help me, because I need not just to be advised about the processes, but I need to be advised even more upstream in the chain, which is the creation and the management of data. And me as a client, I don't have, or I have a small amount of data, or I don't have any data at all, which I need to create from my assets.
Okay. You already said it. You can create, of course, from the assets that are there, and we have a framework with scripts that can do that. But I would firstly really look at the goals that the client has. What do they want to achieve? And if they don't necessarily need that data right away, we usually we set up a process and a technology for like a translation pipeline, whatever. And usually, in the past, it would be TM, MT, human. Now it might even be MT, human, or AI translation, human, whatever you want to call it. But you will create data, and you will create curated data from this process. So from our perspective, and I'm talking now purely from a translation process consultant perspective, not from like a content consultant, because I'm not a content consultant. I wouldn't go that far. I would always suggest take this process, start it. We're setting it up, and you will have well curated data after a while, right? It will take some time, because I dare say that the MT systems, even if they're not trained, are already pretty good. So if you start with that process, you do it for a while, and then you come back and look at for example, you gather your TM data, and then you can use it to train your whatever tech you will then have. You'll probably be faster up and better, instead of trying to convert however it looks, the data you're talking about, because especially if it's in PDFs, you can get it out of there, yes, but it's a real pain in the neck. So you should really think about that, because it will take time and money and effort to get this straight in order to use it for training. You can crawl, you can buy resources, yes. It really depends. How much budget does the customer really have for this, and what's the business case, right? If I do that, how fast will I be able to turn this around and say, okay, listen, my ROI is good. It depends.
No, I agree. And there is another challenge. We're still talking about data, which is that I'm not sure if it's the case for you, but it's the case for me. It's actually when you work with a client, stakeholders. So when you work with their stakeholders, you have, of course, people who might be more or less aware of translation management, who might be more or less aware of what language management is. But you have another category, which is now gaining a lot of importance in some companies, which are data science people. Because data science people are considered in many organizations as the guardians of data. And in some companies, I know some companies where today language data is managed by data science teams and not by people from language management. So do you have some experience, bad or good, by the way, so it doesn't really matter, but some experience working with these people who have a lot of data management expertise, but you come with your translation expertise, and then you have to sort of, you have to mix both, or you have to merge both expertise to say, yes, we are managing language data, so data expertise is necessary, but language expertise is also necessary.
We have experiences with this. Yes, I do like them because they are very clear. Really
For sure.
And yeah, to be fair, not saying that language people aren't, but it's they have a different approach often to the data, more emotion also with it. And the language scientists are more analytic about it. And I have data scientists myself, so I usually take them with me. Or I really like projects where we have a data scientist, or in our case, a female one, and a female terminologist, and they go together, for example, or a female translation expert, or whatever we need here, because then you can really, burn it from both ends. You can talk about what's necessary to talk about. It's all in the communication also, include the stakeholders from the beginning. If you know that you have very analytic people in this project, but you also have maybe a translation department to deal with, or whatever, you take them all, you bring them to the table, you do checkups with them together. You have to include all the stakeholders, always the important ones. Otherwise, you will lose the project at some point, because people won't understand what you're doing. They won't give you the data. They will have some problem. They will walk to management. You don't want that. So this would be my approach. I really do actually like them, though. I don't have a problem with them. They understand us quite well. Actually, I think we are coming from a more analytical data direction, let's say. That's maybe also a difference to LSPs, because we look at language data. I don't want to say unemotionally, but we really look at it as a resource, as a thing to work with, as a thing to build stuff with, and not as like something, that I don't know. We don't cry over it. We just work with it. So I hope that came across right.
No, absolutely no. I can definitely agree with that. It's the challenge is not so much in the collaboration, from my perspective or from my experience. It's more like the challenge may come from the organization itself, where data scientists might be the official guardians and they keep that ownership and not involve enough people from the language management side.
Yeah,
so that's where that is sometimes difficult to manage. Because indeed, the CTO, the CIO is telling data, that's my property. So my people are responsible for it, which is, which can be justified in a way. But language data, if we talk about language data specifically, when it comes to, training data, I have to explain very often that, yes, it's data, but there is also language in the word, which is that, it's not just data, it's not any kind of data. It is language data, and in language data you have various dimensions, which are, linguistic, cultural, contextual, etc., which sometimes data scientists don't have, just because they're focused only on the pure management of data, creating databases, etc., which doesn't involve this sort of, linguistic or cultural approach, which is sometimes where I see the value of working together, because then everyone brings its own value, its own expertise, and it works. I agree with you. It works well, but it's sometimes the problem. The problem, I should say, the challenge. The
it's
challenge.
Okay. Let's say problem. Call it a problem.
Yeah,
A problem.
yeah. No problem. The challenge is like probably upwards, which is at the C level or at the D level, where people might say we don't need linguists for language data because data is something for data scientists only.
I think, though, that this is an age-old problem in business, is it not? Because in my previous life, I was going to be a partner in a firm of accountants. So that's my original training. And it's amazing. So over those, I was in that industry for 15 years, actually. And it was always interesting to go and visit all these different types of clients in all these different industries. So now I can actually understand business models in a heartbeat because I was trained to do it when I was a very, very young adult. But there was, from industry to industry, having individuals who can defend their purpose and present their case as part of the profit making is key to the success of that person's department. Yeah. So what you're talking about to me sounds like an age-old problem in business.
Oh, I don't say it's new. It's something that is sometimes difficult to manage because
but it applies. So
you want to deliver, and there is a roadblock or potential roadblock in your way to deliver, and it's always frustrating. But your job as a consultant is to find a solution anyway. So.
What I find always helps, and it's also why I love this job, is to create a positive experience, to create a positive result, if possible together, or from one side first and show it to the other side and say, look at this, it benefits you all. Look at the numbers, they're good for you. So to walk in their shoes and the other side as well, and that usually draws them automatically together. So we don't actually have to do very much, which is, the example is Roche. We started with an MT selection, evaluation, and introduction process. Then people were drawn because we did interviews. We asked stakeholders, how are you doing it? Look what we're doing. Oh, this is interesting. When you're done, tell us. And now everyone's using it. It's because they're naturally drawn to a solution that they feel actually satisfies their need. And I think this is what you need to create in order for it to function. Businesses are fractioned, they are fragmented, they are, as you describe them, even though they might say they're not. And it's, I think the only way to do this is by good examples, by solid numbers and good arguments. And I think it always comes back to that. Again, a bit philosophical maybe, but it's part of why I like the job. Also to explain to management why this is important, because that's always the toughest nut to crack. Because they really don't get it often. Sorry, if any management listens, please don't. But they do want to understand. We always think they don't want to understand. It's just because they don't have anything to do with it that they're usually alienated by this topic. So you have to kind of try to, in very brief and clear words, bring it closer to them. And it's something that I enjoy doing. I don't always manage and succeed, but I try. And it's for me, it's always very satisfying if that works. And it's good for my clients are usually not management directly, not the highest, but lower. And they are usually then also very happy, obviously, because they get more visibility by it. So it works both ways.
Yeah. I suspect that the ability to contextualize is actually a rare skill. I think it's much rarer than people realize in business, the ability to contextualize. So if you're fortunate enough to have consultants or even people in-house that can do that, it does make a difference to the smoothish running. You don't always want it completely smooth because sometimes a little bit of disruption makes progress. Anyhow, that's another philosophical point. Sure. It's interesting as well. Bruno and I started to do this less than a year ago. So at the start, it was, we obviously were preparing ideas around topics to discuss, and we obviously then send the notes out to the people that are happy to participate, so at least they realise the areas we're going to cover. And what featured heavily at the start was, we were asking questions around the inclusion of AI, and it got to the point where we jokingly were calling it AI bingo. That was me being probably a bit too smart. But but now, in the last 2 or 3 recordings, we haven't even asked that
Oh,
question.
good. I'm
So
glad.
in such
Don't ask.
no, but in such a short space of time. This is the thing
I know.
that's interesting
It's
to
here
me.
to
In
stay.
such a short space of time, so 9 months ago it was a little bit the scary monster. And now it's not even referred to in a lot of the times. However, you did make a very valid point before we started recording about how important it is, even with the AI, that it needs human management. So are you happy to talk a little on that? I know you don't want to talk too much about AI anymore, but
To talk about
without, you mentioned before we started
the
recording
human
that,
behind the tech.
the human behind it. Now, maybe there's nothing more to say. I just thought it was a useful.
I could elaborate a bit
useful.
on the humans because humans are our most valuable asset here at Berns Language Consulting, because we are the experts and consultants, thus we are the product. So if the human behind that product isn't up to the task, we have a problem. And we are very small. So we are almost, it sounds a bit weird when I say it, but we're almost like a family. So we really need to fit together like a hand in a glove, because we work together, usually 2 on one project at least. And, maybe a more tech related person, as I said before, a data scientist and terminologist or something. And these people are all working in fields that change constantly. So they have to constantly learn. And we do that by setting ourselves goals here to really say, okay, what do we need to look at? What systems are changing? Take a look at that. We have experts for certain fields of systems or broader areas of the market, because it's like, I'm telling you, to try to follow up all these little functions and apps and things that are happening in the language space with AI now is impossible. Every minute something new pops up. How are you going to be able to evaluate that? It's impossible. So we take it from another perspective. Like when we have a customer and they want to do something in that space, we then take a look at it. We then take a screenshot of the market and tell them, okay, this is what you can have now. This is what we think. This is what we think you should do now. Tomorrow could be different. And I think it's the only way right now you can actually tackle this. And then finally, when you decided what to do, you should stick with it. Don't change it all the time, because then you will go nuts. You have to continue that. When you're done with whatever use case, whatever you're doing, you can do the next one. But don't keep switching and changing, and don't listen to too many stakeholders at that point. Inform them, but don't take any more advice, new systems, whatever, because then you'll never be done. But the humans behind this have to be very steadfast and in their work, and very interested at the same time in learning new stuff all the time. So this is the kind of human resources we are looking for. We need. And they have to have an intrinsic interest also in these topics. If you just do this per functionary, it won't work, because it's too much stress you're getting from this industry. You have to really love it as well. My sounds a bit, that's emotional. We are really very much loving our job, and I think that's the way it can also work. Yeah.
Do you find your clients, Bruno, challenging you over wanting to know why AI is not used more so that they can cut down the cost of humans? I know that's a sore topic, and I'm not necessarily in favour. It's just a topic. And it's the type of things that people might say to us as well. We can use AI to find 100 people.
Yeah. You can.
That's actually going to be... You can actually use AI to find 100 CVs. That might not be 100 people.
Exactly.
But,
No, absolutely. I keep saying that technology is as good as the people are going to implement it and adopt it. I think that, you don't, to your point, Kerstin, when you mentioned that there is something new every day, probably now every hour, it's great, because you see that there is a lot of excitement, there is a lot of passion around that. But at the end of the day, any tool, any piece of technology is going to be really valuable if people use it and if people adopt it. So at the end of the day, even if you have a very technical discussion, it brings you back to humans at some point. Because as I was saying in my presentation in Vienna, many people are rushing sometimes to technology as, wow, this is the land of, milk and honey. Everything is going to be great. Technology is going to help us grow by 200% a year. I heard many things about that. But at the end of the day, if people are rushing, then of course they are not able to understand or to be aware if they are really ready to do it, if they are ready to use this technology, which is so great. And AI is a good example of that, because so many people rushed to AI because it was supposed to be a magic wand or something as a miracle, which I never believed in. But okay, to your point, Paula, yes, I heard it from clients. And, it is, as a consultant, I was saying, I understand your objective, which is to be better, faster, etc. That's, of course, very legitimate. But first, you need to make sure that you and people, humans, your processes are ready to, be infused with this new technology, which is AI.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, you can buy. First of all, AI is very expensive to implement, so that's the other thing. So if it becomes a pure technology project, then of course, your human organization might not even use it, might not be skilled to use this technology because they don't know how to benefit from it. So there is always this sort of step, which is much more a balance between human technology and processes, where you have to get ready yourself as a leader or as a client. And then finally, when everything is ready, say, okay, let's go for it and let's deliver on the promise. But this is this step which is before what I call upstream AI, because many people talk about downstream AI, output and, human supervision, post-editing. I spend a lot of time actually talking about and focusing on what I call upstream AI, not downstream, but upstream. What needs to be done, in the beginning. Let's start with the beginning. So probably that's something that you are kind of familiar with as well, Kerstin.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, Bruno, people say, okay, we need to use AI somehow. I have this goal now. Let's all remember that I'm working in Germany with German customers. They are very particular and they take a little longer. They're a little more skeptical. They're a little slower sometimes. Not all of them, for sure. We have great, very fast customers. Please, no one feel offended by this. But I think everyone knows the German industry is moving a little more slowly, a little more step by step. So they still want to and need to do it. And we need to, because we're consultants, obviously need to be a step ahead. But that's my challenge really for my business, for my people. That's why I was highlighting that. I wasn't meaning the customer side. I was actually meaning ourselves, our resources at Berns Language Consulting. We need to be always on our tippy toes, keep nimble, look at everything and be covered. So in case someone needs to know something, and because our customers are relying on us for consulting them, obviously. But obviously, every change needs management. And I think what you just described, and this is so interesting to me because, yes, it's AI now. For me, AI is just a piece of technology. I'm being very simple-minded now, maybe. But for me, it's just a piece of technology that you need to use, that you make use of. And to be able to use it, the organization oftentimes needs change management to be able to understand it, to implement it, to use it, to cope with it, to change their ways. And we are also doing that. And it's a very important part of the job. Actually, I didn't even highlight that along with tech change and processes always comes change management before, while, and after. So we always need to think that also when we think tech projects, obviously. Never mind what tech.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned there about, the importance of working tightly as a team, and you're referring to your consultancy as a small consultancy. Ironically, I don't see that as a small consultancy when you've 12 people. But how do you then manage and facilitate and ensure that your team members are able to be elevated through professional and personal development? Because there obviously has to be a consistency around delivery, because that is what your, Berns Consulting has, that brand. but then you also have, you have people in there who are ambitious, obviously exceptionally capable. How do you manage both, where you're trying to maintain a consistency, but then you have all these, these people, some of them younger professionals, who have ambitious and need to be developed and elevated, and you actually know that the truth of it is that our consultancy is known for this, and in 2 years' time you're going to be far outgrown this. So how do you manage all that? It's hard.
Yeah. It's a very good question. It's actually, I sometimes, I think I'm very blessed because I love my team, and my team,
yes,
they are really great. I mean, obviously, they know all the stuff. I sometimes feel like I hardly know anything. So I always know that
it's a very familiar feeling.
Yeah, but I can ask them something and they will help me. They will, write something up for me. They will brief me before a call, whatever. And it's, and they're really, and if they don't know, they will tell me, because we have, it's very important for us. We really try not to bullshit people. Sorry for the blunt language, because
that's okay.
If you are a consultant, you have to also sometimes say, I don't know. I have to check. I have to ask, and I can always say I have to ask my team, which is great. So I'm always safe. But obviously, we can't know it all. No one does. And in this, I think in this secure space, they can learn. They learn on the job. They learn on the side. They always have different projects. We always have new stuff to do. So they actually never get bored. I think that's why, because as you said, the youngsters, they really want to go there, but most of them are very happy in their field, and they're happy to take on new jobs, new projects, and they, and it actually, there's always something going on. I don't think that people will be bored. They will continue, obviously, on their path if they're young, and I happily send them on, because that's the way it is, right?
That's right.
We often, I don't lose people. I send them on, and I'm happy to do so, because I know they are well educated. They learn more with me. Often they tell me that too. They say, I'm sorry, but I have to go. And I say, yes, I know. And I am sad. Sometimes I'm angry because I don't want to lose them. But it's the way of the world. And it's almost like, with your kids. Someday they will leave the house. Right. That's how it's supposed to be. But I have people that with me for a long time already. Sorry for the camera. It keeps happening. It's fine. Huh? So I'm for the longest time, and they are a constant in my team, and that is great. That is really. That's why I think I'm blessed. Otherwise, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you've quite a philosophical approach to that. I had a business partner years ago. Oh my goodness, he used to take it personally if anybody handed in their notice. And I remember once, we were both much, much younger. We don't work together anymore, but I remember once being in a room, and this poor young woman walked in, and she was working in a support function. Again, it was in a recruitment agency that we'd set up. Different, it wasn't in this industry. And this poor young woman came into the room to say she decided to go back. She had left. She was working as a receptionist in a dentist office. So it was a very different job to what we needed done. What we needed done was very, very process-oriented. I have a very process-style mind. And there wasn't anywhere near as much engagement, with the patients coming in and out that she would have been dealing with. So it turns out she stayed with us for about 3 or 4 months. At least she stayed long enough to realise she just didn't like it. It was nothing to do with us. Yeah. She came into the room, and I got the surprise of my life. My business partner nearly launched himself across the table at this girl. And I'm going, everybody ding, 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 stop. Couldn't believe it. Sorry, I just an aside.
But I feel with them, because in the beginning, I've been doing this for 19 years. In the beginning, I was very emotional when people did that. It's really true. Okay. I myself grew. I hope I learned a little bit and understand now that when people leave you, usually it's not because of you, which I hope. Because mostly they come to our summer parties still, even the ones that left. So I think it's a good sign. But they go because they want to experience more, right? I did. I went to Daimler Chrysler, to BMW, and then I didn't. Okay, now I'm kind of. I'm happily stuck with my own company, but for 9 years. But that's because it's my company. Otherwise, I probably would still be changing places. So just to get the experience and to meet new people and do new things, and this is the spirit that we also want here. So as you said, it's a struggle. but we are happy to find the right people and make them stay a while, which then makes it worth our while too. Yeah.
And do you have time to even think about your own professional development, or is it just, obviously you have other commitments outside work as well as the massive commitments within work? Or does that interest you? Or
yeah, it does. I do learn so much. As I said, I mean, you say we are not that small, but still, we can have dailies with all of us every day, and one weekly, 1 hour every Friday, where we really exchange in-depth information. And I do check into projects and get a lot of information and reports. And I have to say, I learned so much new stuff. I'm quite happy, to be honest, to learn on the job still. And I will probably never be done. I also try to learn Spanish, which I have to say, I started late and I should have started earlier. It takes me longer than I expected to be proficient. But I still do that once a week, and I have 2 kids. So and luckily all my parents still in law, and
that's great.
So the families also plays a big part, and and that is already all my time. Like I have 2 kids. My 3rd kid is the business, and then the family and friends, and
Isn't that great though that you have that peace?
Yeah. I'm very. As I said, I feel blessed, and I hope it will last a little longer. I'm very happy with what I do.
A lot longer, if that's what you wish.
Yeah. Well, and Paula, you mentioned, of course, something about the younger or youngest people who are, still fresh. It's not doesn't mean that we are not fresh anymore, but who are fresh in the industry. That's what I meant. And but you, of course, as an experienced leader, you mentioned the number of years you've been in this position. Do you face some, I would say, difficult conversations with younger people when you tell them that they have to keep learning? Because even today, there are still young people who are graduating and they feel like relief to say, oh, now, learning is done. I did my job. I've a degree in this. I have a degree in that. But of course, the reality is that they have to keep learning all their life.
Yeah.
Do you feel this when you attract young people? Do you feel, or do you hear this sort of reaction from younger people saying, "Oh, I thought that my degree was enough, but Kerstin, you tell me that I have to keep learning every day." And I think it's the difference between the theory and the practice.
Yeah, I don't actually have to tell them. I think we are attracting.
Okay.
No, it's true. Often they ask me, how can we continue? And I think because in our line of business, as I said, we're getting more data, more technical, more, we're getting more data scientists as well, but also linguists. And they come because they want to learn. Because there's hardly, in Germany, there isn't, I don't know of any comparable place where you can do this kind of process and tech consulting and working with data and being quite free at it. And I think this attracts them once they know of us. Obviously, we're not hugely famous or anything, but we go to unis. We have a uni in Cologne we work with. They are very tech oriented, and we recruit them when they're young. So they come to us, they write their thesis, like papers, and they work, like they're working students with us and everything, interns. And when we like them, we tell them, hey, you want to stay? I have many of those here because it's the only way we can attract this kind of, we get this kind of commitment, and also find out that we fit together.
Good match.
Yeah. And I don't actually have that discussion very much with the youngsters, maybe more with the older, long term, but not really. They don't discuss it. Sometimes they need to be reminded that they have very curated, very well tuned knowledge, but they need to up the game sometimes, push the envelope, watch what's going on, but they learn also from the fresh new ones that come, and it's so nice to see, and we learn with every project, I have to say. Not only our customers, but also ourselves. We learn something new every time.
Yeah.
I believe, having seen lots of different businesses over the years and having recruited, for lots of different size organizations, that unfortunately or unfortunately, within smaller businesses, it becomes evident very quickly that people are not on top of the game. Whereas in larger organizations, it might not be spotted as quickly.
Yes.
But the truth is as well is there is room for everybody. There's room for the massively ambitious. There's room for those that are, have too much commitment outside work and just need to continue to do the same job for 20 years. It's just important that those individuals find the right home.
Exactly.
When they don't end up with the right home, it's quite difficult for everybody involved.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And we have very different people, right? I mean, they're very we have a more outspoken, more introvert, like all kinds of introverts, all kinds of people, but they all have expert knowledge. They all bring it to the table when we brainstorm in their way. And some clients like to work with more introvert people, some like more extrovert. It is so different. Some people are repelled by me because I'm too wild for them. So it's really, you have to find, also you have not only have to find the right people for your team, but you also have to find the right people for your customer that really work well, because they can always use the swarm brain behind, right? It's always fine. But who's actually talking to them up front? Who's the right person to understand them, to hear them, for them to talk to? It's not always the same person. Very different.
I agree with that. Yeah, I definitely have experienced that. The other thing as well is I'm hugely grateful when any of my team members are so sparky. It's easier to manage somebody who's too sparky than somebody who's not sparking at all.
Yeah.
That's my personal experience. I prefer to be saying, okay, we don't actually quite have a spare 20,000 for you to go off and do that MBA. But at least I'm delighted I'm having the conversation rather than saying to somebody, hello, anybody home?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's it's always easier. But when you need all this different kind of expertise, you have to also deal with the different types of personalities. Well, I don't even want to say have to. You are allowed to. You can, and it's great to also experience that in a way.
Yeah, and while talking about the future, I'm not going to ask you your predictions for the next years, but I just wanted to ask you.
No, me too.
Your hopes, your wishes. I know you are going to tell me, I want to keep my business going and growing. That's obvious, but more broadly, if I can use that term. What would be your wishes, or your wish if you have only one, in terms of development and your expectations from this moving world in between technology, humans, and processes? What would be because sometimes I'm asked about my predictions, and I stopped. I said I don't predict anything. I just want to tell my hopes, but not my predictions. That's the difference. Usually it's very different, actually. So, but actually, what is if you had one wish or several wishes for the future, not just business-wise, but also more personally, what would you say?
I personally would really wish for this AI ethic and framework discussion to shape up, because I feel that we are missing out on that. And we're talking about the tech, we're talking about how to use it and everything and what it costs and the quality. And lots of these discussion points, by the way, almost the same like when NMT came to the stage. Very funny that. But it's so I can almost answer them in my sleep because they're almost the same. But of course, it's way more disruptive, and we really need to. I wish, for me as a company and also as consultants, we would really like to have a good framework to operate in. And I think for NMT that was a little easier. You said, okay, we do it local, we do it in the cloud. We don't do it, we do it. That was it. We have an API, we don't have an API. But now, who owns it? What can you do with it? Who's allowed to do what? What about copyright? What? There's so much going on that, and I'm talking about Gen AI and the big ones, right? Of course, you can have your smaller SLM, whatever, yourself, and you can do with it what you want, but you want to operationalize it. You want to put it in your pipeline. So you need to know, what am I allowed to do? What is okay to do? And that would be my hope, because I think it would help the whole industry, that this pick up and that people take it seriously. Who owns it? Who has a right policy? There's hardly, I mean, there's talks being talked, but is it enough? Is it really getting somewhere? Do we even get a solution here? This is actually something that would really help me personally and my business a lot if that be solved. But I fear it may take some time.
Oh, I suspect it will. And the thing is, you just do not want to be part of the test cases.
Yes, exactly.
You don't. People keeping their head below the parapet, thinking, "Oh Lord, don't let me get it ever so slightly wrong, so they'll use me as a test case." That's it. I remember that was a concern of mine when GDPR sort of came about. So I'm the most compliant GDPR small business owner you'll ever meet. The minute something ever so slightly goes wrong that really is so immaterial, I'm reporting it. I report it within about 10 minutes the minute I discover that we've made some sort of very, very, very minor immaterial breach. I do not want to be a test case, a tiny little small business owner.
Yeah, and it can destroy your business for sure.
Yeah,
especially if you work with personal data only. So
we do. We definitely do. Now we're very, very particular and very careful, and I'm very process oriented. But we're human.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's why it's called Top Voices, because
I know
we want to hear about people, the voices of people, not just because they're at the top, but also because they have a voice. And they should use their voice to to express what they wish, what they want, just like you did it. That's what I would wish for myself and for my business, because making predictions is totally irresponsible for the moment. I know some people do that in magazines, but I don't know how they do
it. There's enough out there already.
Yes.
But it's funny when you actually asked that question, Bruno, the very first picture that jumped into my head, I could picture 1,000 young people sitting in their rooms at home or in their offices right now, designing products that in 12 months' time will be might not be 12 months' time, but it won't be much longer than that, where it'll actually be part of, one or two of them are going to be part of our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And there's at least 1,000 around the world doing that as we speak.
Exactly.
Particularly in this space.
No, you're right.
That's the very first picture I was thinking of, all these people sitting there going, coding to beat the band. That's the picture I had. So how can you predict, particularly in this space?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one question that I forgot to ask you, Kerstin, you work with very different industries. You work with the automotive industry, life science. So these are very different. I mean, I'm not an expert in the automotive world, but I know life science is very particular in many ways. What is your main takeaway from working with so many different industries? Because I know some people like me, I include myself in that, we prefer to work with a selection of industries, not automotive or not in the gaming industry, because I'm not an expert in gaming. I prefer to stick to my industries, which are life science and tech. But for you, working with different companies in different industries, what is your main takeaway as a leader?
Oh, I have to say, we always say that it portiert. You can use this knowledge the same way. Like if a customer,
it's transferable.
Yeah, if a customer wants us to look at their processes in tech, we do that. We do a gap analysis. We tell them what we would think they should change or not change. We help them change that. We look at the data, and yes, there's different requirements involved. Sometimes you have other security levels for the data, whatever. But in the bottom line, it's processes, it's people, and it's tech. And to be fair, I think if you do it for the pharma industry, for that space, you can probably do it for every other space, because they are the toughest, right? So
I totally agree with that. Totally agree.
I never refuse. I mean, we tackle all customers when they're interested. We do all projects. We learn, as I said, we learn everything every time. And I actually enjoy that quite a bit because we learn so much about different industries that way. It's quite fun to see where the differences are. There are differences, but they're not huge. The requirements are often, bottom line, the requirements and the goals are often the same. Sometimes verge more to we need to be fast. Sometimes they verge more to we need to be less expensive. But it's always time, quality, cost. It's basically still the same.
No, you're right.
It changes not that much, actually.
I know so many people who would love to work for BMW because BMW is such a big name in the automotive industry, not just in Germany but around the world. I mean, if you go to China, Chinese people will say, "I want to buy a BMW or an Audi," because that's a sign of quality. But I know so many people who would love to be really, involved in this industry, and specifically for the big brands like you did, BMW and Porsche, and also the first one that you mentioned,
Porsche and Audi.
Roche.
No.
In the automotive?
In the automotive. Yeah, Daimler.
Yeah.
Daimler. That is another one. Big. It's one of the. I mean, Germany is really has the latest big brands in the automotive world.
Let's see how long they stay. I hope they stay for a long time. Yeah, it's the automotive industry. It's interesting what's happening.
Yeah,
but see, bottom line, yes, it's great because they have great names, and you might like the design of the car, or you might like the feel of the car. For me, for example, I love the design of Porsche. I really always wanted to work for that company when I was little, even. But bottom line still is it's data, it's process. The funny thing is, you get there, you think, oh my God, great, we're working for Porsche, whatever. But yes. And it is great because they're great people and it's fun to work with them. But it's basically, again, you have people, you have data, you have processes and tech, and it's always that. And with different, products that you do it for, you can imagine them. But bottom line, still, that's what it is. And
I'm sure you made a number of people jealous in Vienna last week because you were telling I'm working with Porsche. I mean, I don't know how many people would say, give me a contract with Porsche.
And it is great and it's fun. And I have to say that also because our client personally is a great client to work with, and she's very supportive. And also I make my father very proud because he's a very big Porsche fan, and for him that was the greatest. Oh my God, you're working for Porsche! They couldn't believe it. So I am happy to do that, but again, it's I won't repeat myself.
No, it's
still
you have to deliver. It's still work. Do you drive a Porsche? That's my question.
No,
have you ever driven one?
Yes, with my dad. We had one. My dad had one. A 911 lemon,
nice.
Beautiful. Doesn't have it anymore though. No, I don't actually enjoy driving cars that much. I love looking at them though. I love the design.
Okay.
I love the design. When I was in China this year, I also participated at a conference there, also with Porsche, and so we checked out all the cars because there's so many different vehicles. Electric vehicles is so much fun. To watch all the designs and compare, so that I like, but I don't necessarily need to own one. I'm not a car owner type person.
I used to drive sports cars.
Nice.
But then the financial crash came, and that taught me manners. I can tell you, as a business owner, I then had to reevaluate what mattered.
I mean, we have a family car for sure, but it's not a Porsche.
Well, and in Germany, automotive brands can be really luxury like Porsche, or they can be more mainstream like Volkswagen or Audi.
Exactly.
So you can choose. I mean, it's the only country that has still so many different brands. In Europe, at least. It's as you said, it's the latest, dynamic country in terms of automotive industry, because many other countries have already given up. Even Volvo is owned by China now. So it's the world has changed as well for the automotive industry.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
You're bringing back very fond memories for me, but I need to just switch my brain back into the real world from my life now. So, is there, Kerstin, is there anything else that we haven't asked you that you might like to talk about, or that you feel would add value to you, your business, or maybe to people that might be listening, be your clients or other, suppliers or whatever in the industry, or anything that you feel we haven't asked you? Because it can get very distracting when we're talking to people
I
to get
really
completely
enjoyed
involved
it. It was very
in the
natural.
individual.
Thank you. I think we talked about my business, and of course, I'd be happy if people would be interested in our consultancy or our data services. Feel free to contact me. Of course, that would be lovely. And
Okay, I'm going to ask a question around that if you don't mind, and then you get a chance to answer it. So if it just gives you a chance to, without. So Kerstin, your consultancy, you, as Bruno has mentioned, you cover a broad range of types of organisations with across a number of different industries. Maybe if you want to tell us a little bit about your client base, how do people engage with you if they might like to work with you, on a consultancy basis? Do you want to maybe tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, sure. So, often clients contact us really. As you said, mid-size to large companies, and mid-size in Germany are already pretty huge. And they usually come with either, can you please look at my processes, the translation process, and give me your idea? Is it good? Are we set up well? Or they come with, I don't have any. I would like to know what to do. I need a strategy. So this would be the things they would ask us, but also maybe very particular, very specific things like, I have this terminology data. I'm not sure of the quality. Could you analyze it for me? Or I want to build up an MT system. I need data for that. We talked about it for training an engine. Can you please help me with this? Find the data or groom the data or check the quality of it. Or evaluate systems. So it's different things they would ask us. Of course, we also go to conferences and try to attract clients that way, like language intelligence in Vienna, for example, to market our usually use cases with customers. That works. I find that works very well. It gives traction to what we really do, to show that it's really tangible, that it's real, that we're really doing these projects. And all kinds of businesses really can come to us. Sometimes even LSPs come.
Okay.
Although they are well advised themselves usually.
But you never know. You have an area of expertise that maybe even in-house LSPs, might not wish to invest directly in a full-time member of staff, but you guys might have the expertise. So how, if you were to draw your ideal next customer, what does that look like?
My ideal next customer, to be fair, it would be someone that's already pretty well set up, actually, translation process-wise, that would be interested in introducing AI to their process chain and to co-create with us. Because we did some of these projects now, and we thoroughly enjoyed that. It is extremely, you learn so much, both sides, and it's very valuable, I think, for the customers. So I would love to do more of that. And also bring all your data to us. Customers with data they're not sure about, bring it to us, because we have this great framework now. We would really like to help you out. And it's for us, it's a couple of clicks and a little bit of code, but for you, it's a huge benefit. So also data people come.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kerstin, for joining us. It's been absolutely so interesting, certainly for me. I associate a little bit with, your, the nature of your professional services industry, the professional services delivery. I'm obviously not a specialist in your field, but I admire your energy and enthusiasm. That's one thing I actually did notice when we were in LT Innovate in Vienna last week. I was actually watching you flying around the place with all that beautiful hair, thinking, oh my goodness, that's wonderful. So again, but thank you very much for your contribution. You've been generous in sharing your experience and knowledge and, advice, etc. So
I second that, and I would say one more word: passion, because you are a person of passion. You mentioned, of course, what we discussed last week in Vienna in the Language Intelligence Conference, and what was great in this conference. among many other things, was the level of passion of people who
Yeah.
were participating in this conference. Not so many people, but all passionate people. Passionate in different ways, technical way or marketing way or recruiting way. So I think that you were really a good example of passion. In addition to energy, in addition to that, I think passion for me is very important because I think passion keeps humans alive. That's really what I would say as a conclusion.